ESPC community webinar. Today I'm joined by Matt Collins-Jones, MVP, who will cover Power Platform Pipelines, ALM for all sizes. We love hearing guys have to say, so remember to join in conversation about today's webinar and more on X. Our handle is @ESPC_community and our hashtag is #ESPC25. Tweet us, tag us, and tell us what you learned. Don't forget to check out our Learning Hub, which is updated the latest blogs, ebooks, webinars, and how-to videos. You can access and view the Learning Hub by visiting our website, sharepointeurope.com, and clicking Content tab at the top. Don't let the learning stop here. Continue to keep up and stay ahead by joining us for our next webinar, Unlocking Dataverse Functions, Code Less, Do More, with ALM Burgess. This webinar will take place tomorrow, Wednesday, the 8th of October, 11 a.m. CEST. For more information on this webinar, please check out www.sharepointeurope.com/register for webinars. Get €150 off your ESPC 25 ticket with the late bird sale, limited time only. Join Europe's leading Microsoft 365, Azure, and AI community in Dublin from the 1st to the 4th of December 2025. Don't miss your chance to connect, learn, and grow with the best in the industry. Book now and save €150. After this webinar, we'll have a questions and answers session. Type any questions you might have into the chat box. Questions will be selected and answered at the end of the presentation. This webinar will be recorded and added to the Resource Center, where you'll be notified by email when it's available. And now I'm going to pass you over to today's webinar presenter, Matt. Hello, Matt. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Sean, and thank you for that introduction. I'll just take over screen sharing and we'll get started. Great. Thank you, everyone, for joining me here today. I'm really thankful for the organisers that gave me a chance to talk about this topic again today. This is one of the topics I really love talking about. It's something that I'm very passionate about, and you'll probably see that throughout the course of this presentation. So this is Power Platform Pipelines, like ALM for all sizes. What I'm going to be talking about today is all about the different ways you can implement Power Platform pipelines in your organization, regardless of the size, whether you're a small organization, whether you're a large organization. So just a quick introduction to me. My name is Matt Collins-Jones. Most people call me MCJ because Matt Collins-Jones is a bit of a mouthful. I'm a managing solution architect at Capgemini in the UK. I'm also a Microsoft certified trainer. I'm a Microsoft MVP, celebrating 5 years. I'm also a Microsoft Fast Track recognized solution architect in Power Automate. The little QR code on the left is my link tree. That's where you can get all the details of every different way to connect to me, from like LinkedIn to Blue Sky to GitHub and my blog and YouTube and everything in between. I'm on a lot of platforms, so loads of different ways to get in contact with me, loads of different ways to talk about pipelines and see all my learning. So, agenda for today. We're going to talk about a little bit about what is ALM. We're going to talk about what are Power Platform pipelines, different sizes of organization, how we classify them, pipelines in different sized organizations, so how you can change the pipeline structure based on the size of your organization. We're going to talk a little bit about delegated deployments. These are super powerful and they're really good for organizations, but only if you know how to use them properly. We're going to talk a little bit about Git integration and GitHub integration, but more on that later because I know it's a hot topic at the moment. We've got some demos throughout, and we'll do a quick wrap up, and I'll save time for questions at the end. I basically just can't see the chat as I'm like presenting and doing other things at the moment, so I'll take questions at the end if that's all right. So what is ALM? So ALM stands for Application Lifecycle Management. Now, as a traditional like framework for ALM, it's kind of this symbol on the right of the screen. So it's kind of the idea of continuous application building and deployment. So you plan, you track, you develop, you build, you test, you deploy, operate, you monitor, learn, you do the same thing again. That's typically what, like literally on the Microsoft side, that's what they define ALM as. In terms of Power Platform and in terms of like business applications, what we generally term ALM as is this idea of a continuous deployments, so CI/CD testing, and it's the idea of taking something from one environment to another environment. So you build all your things in dev, you move those across to your test environment or your UAT environment, and you move it across to your production environment. There can be many more environments in that structure. There can be multiple devs, there can be multiple tests and UATs and everything else. But generally, it's that concept of moving things from one environment to another environment and how we actually handle that. One thing that we actually always forget, though, is actually decommissioning. Like, how do you handle decommissioning of apps and solutions and things like that? So now, so let's talk about the platform itself, just to give you a bit of an overview. I'm really sorry, guys. I've just noticed a mistake on my slides. Yeah, it's not develop platforms to build and scale AI solutions. It's just to build and scale AI, just build and scale solutions. I shamelessly stole this slide from Microsoft, and I just think that solutions and not just AI solutions are a great thing that we should be worrying about. So the Power Platform is all these different components, Power Apps, Power Automate, Copilot Studio, Power Pages. These are all kind of backed or can be backed with things like Dataverse, and Dataverse is the heart of like ALM for a lot of organizations in terms of solutions and how you store things. Here's the special guest, my cat Miso, who's come to join us today. She's very passionate about Power Platform pipelines as well. It's one of the great things about working at home and not delivering this to you on stage somewhere. But Power Platform also offers code-first developer experiences and tools. So things like VS Code, things like Visual Studio, ADO pipelines as well. We're not really going to talk about too much about ADO pipelines. We'll talk a little bit about Azure DevOps, as well as pipelines in the platform. So Power Platform pipelines, GitHub, Playwright, all of these great things, a full developer experience from developing in low code to Fusion teams, augmenting with high code, automated testing, and then deployment. So full scale of platform here that we have access to, which is fantastic that we get all these things. And the majority of things in the Power Platform are free to build, which is great. It's only really charges you for when you start using things. And we'll talk a little bit about requirements and stuff. So what are Power Platform pipelines? So you've probably heard of pipelines before. Most people are very familiar with Azure DevOps pipelines. Or you may be familiar with build tools and things like that for deploying solutions. But what are Power Platform pipelines? So Power Platform pipelines are a built-in deployment mechanism in platform and in UI, meaning that you don't have to move away from your solution designer. You can stay in platform. You don't need to go to a third party to handle your pipelines. You need to go to a different website to create your pipelines or to trigger the deployments. It's all done in UI. So the place where you're building is the place where you deploy. It stores the managed and the unmanaged solutions in each deployment. Now, that's really important. If you do not have your unmanaged solutions stored somewhere, then if you ever need to rebuild a dev environment or rehydrate a dev environment, you won't be able to do it because you'll only have the managed solutions. And that's if you're actually saving and storing your managed solutions as well, because again, a lot of organizations forget to do this because they have no source control. They have no setup for these things. So this does it out of the box automatically. You do not need to change anything. It just stores them, and that's great. It also logs each solution deployment run. So every time you trigger a deployment, every time you go to run something, it'll create a log record to say, hey, someone triggered this deployment this time in this solution. This is a solution that was deployed, and this is kind of where it went to and everything else, which is great. There's also pre-validation of solutions for deployments. So as you go to deploy the solution, what it's going to do is it's going to pre-check the solution items that are inside of that solution. So it's going to check for things like connections. It's going to check for things like missing components, and it's going to validate it against the target environment that you're deploying against. Meaning that historically, what we'd have to do is we'd have to go to a solution, download it. Remember to download the managed and the unmanaged version and save them in your source control. Then you go across to your target environment, so say your test environment. You go to import it, and then you get a dependency error, or you get a missing configuration error or some sort of error. And then you have to go all the way back to your dev environment. You'd have to re-export your solutions. You'd have to save them in your source control again. And you have to do the whole thing again. Pipelines mitigates this because it does those pre-validation checks. It checks to see whether you have permissions in those target environments. It checks to see whether you have missing components in those target environments. So it means that you can speed up the process for deployment. You're no longer like having to download and save things. They can also be stage gated as well. So they can be extended to include approvals or things like delegated deployments or additional source control. I'll show you an additional source control today. I won't show you an approval, but I'll show you some delegated deployments. But the idea is that you are basically telling the user how they're going to deploy. You're going to deploy from this environment to this environment to this environment. That is the process. That is the structure. Before you deploy to this environment, we're also going to put in an approval mechanism so that the senior dev, the senior engineer, the product owner, whoever can approve that deployment. Because no one deploys on Fridays. That's just a basic rule. Come on, guys. You also get visibility of deployments for makers, developers, and admins. So Microsoft have done some great work in this recently. We now have the deployment section of the Power Platform Admin Center, which is fantastic. I'll show you a little bit about that later. There is also a deployment experience for makers as well, so that if you are building things in the same environment, you can go see what deployments are happening at the moment, which is fantastic. And we can also have, I'll also show you the Power Platform deployment application where you can see all the runs and you can see everything that's going on. Now, the one caveat to this is that it requires managed environments, and that's what the little asterisk there is for. Managed environments are a fantastic feature by Microsoft. They enable loads of different controls. We've got a bunch of new ones coming in, like Advanced Connector Protocol, which means that you can really granularly add DLPs to environments, like down to the action level, rather than the connector level, which is a great additional tool set for admins and governance forums inside of organizations. We have things like better backup retention up to 28 days for environments that aren't Dataverse. There are loads of great features. There's some pipelines features in there as well. But because it requires managed environments, what managed environments do is they make everything inside of that environment a premium thing. So a premium flow, a premium application, a premium Copilot Studio bot agent. Now, I know what a lot of people say is like, oh, I can build a pipeline and I don't require managed environments. And that's true for the most part, but it's not within the context of the licensing guide. It's not within the spirit of the licensing guide. The licensing guide says if you're using pipelines, you should everything needs to be managed environments. So you can technically, there's no enforcement today, but you do see big banners come across to say, hey, this is a managed environment feature. Make sure you turn this on. And if you get audited, you will be not compliant with Microsoft licensing. So if you're going to use pipelines, you need to turn on managed environments. It's just a prerequisite. This is a little bit about what the Power Platform pipeline screen. So I'll try to show this in a little bit more detail, but the idea is that it's embedded in your Solution Explorer. It's just a little drop down on the menu on the left. You can choose your pipelines from a drop down. You can see the environments that you're going into and the environments that are later on. And you'll actually notice, and again, this is the reason why I included the screenshot, is that this is stage gated, meaning that I can't deploy straight to preview in this pipeline. I can only deploy from my deployment environment, my development environment, to my MCJ3 environment. I can't directly deploy to my preview environment, meaning that things have to go through a testing mechanism. Things have to go through the right process to ensure that we're deploying in the right environment. So you can't just deploy straight to prod. I'm very sorry for people that want to do. Now, these are things I hear a lot when I talk about Power Platform pipelines. I hear it's just low code pipelines. It's not for enterprise. It can't be scaled. There's no governance around it. It's too simple. It doesn't work. ADO is better. ALM accelerator is better. Build tools are better. All of these things. And for this, I say only Sith deals in absolutes. Now, I'm really sorry. I do not have a stage today, although I'm on this webinar. I do, however, have a lightsaber. So again, I'm going to say I have the high ground. So if you want to come at me about pipelines not being a real thing, like I've got plenty of lightsabers as well. So yeah, only disappointment is not actually having a stage to stand on this week. Right, now we get Star Wars jokes out of the way. Pipelines. So there are two essentially flavors of pipelines. And Microsoft have really done a really great job at trying to make pipelines accessible for everyone, because Microsoft think that ALM should not just be something that only the experts can do. It should be something that's easy for everyone to do, to have better ALM. So they've offered two flavors. They've offered personal pipelines and they've offered custom host pipelines. So a personal pipeline is something that is available to people out of the box. So anyone that it still requires managed environments, but one of the things that it does is it provisions an environment in the background for you. So what we call a platform host environment. Now this takes up no storage in your Dataverse or in your tenancy at all. And it is there out of the box for people to use when they start to build pipelines. You can only scale it to one or two environments, so like target environments, meaning that if you have a complex structure or like more environments than that, personal pipelines aren't really for you. You can't extend the pipelines at all, so you can't add delegated deployments, you can't add approvals in there. They can't be shared with other people. So it's basically for those organizations that are maybe really small or have several makers where just those individual makers want to be able to deploy things and be able to do things on a smaller scale. They can be scaled up. So if you do have like large citizen developer environments and you want them to use personal pipelines to just deploy for them to deploy their own things along their own paths to their own shared maker or shared citizen developer environments, they can actually absolutely be used for that. But due to like lack of controls and things like that, most organizations will probably take out custom host pipelines. So a custom host pipeline is basically the full pipeline experience. Now, this does require a separate Dataverse environment to provision the pipeline application in. So to get the pipeline application, you get your environment, you go to the Power Platform Admin Center, you go to Dynamics 365 apps. Oh, one caveat, you do actually need to make sure that the environment is enabled for Dynamics apps. Even if you don't have Dynamics licenses, it's a requirement for it to be enabled for it. Even if you never plan to install Dynamics, it's fine. And then you go to Dynamics apps, and then it's a thing that you can install from there. And it installs from Microsoft, and they send a solution file, and they download the components and stuff like that. All free. You don't need to pay for this. It's just the managed environments are the bits where you need to make sure you're licensed correctly. But it does need to be in a separate environment. I highly, highly, highly cannot say enough about not installing it in your dev environment. If you don't have the capacity to have another environment, use personal pipelines. If you want better ALM, if you want more control, use a custom host pipeline, but create a new environment for it. So custom host pipelines is that full experience. You can have multiple target environments. I've never tried about how many target environments I can have. I think I had like 5 at one stage. You can have as many as you want. There's no limit in the documentation. There's probably a real limit, but like I'm not sure you'll hit it. They're fully extendable, so you can do all your customizations, all of your approvals, everything else, and they can be shared, administered, and governed centrally or by teams. So you can share your pipelines, you can create pipelines, admins can edit them and stuff like that. So all different ways to do the same thing. So. Right, we're going to do a quick demo next. So we'll launch this up. So we're doing a quick demo. We'll go back to the slides. I'm just going to show you a couple of little bits here. So this is one of my environments. This is my Matt Collins Jones environment. And in here, I have a solution, and I've called this ADO Git demo. So this solution contains 3 components. It contains an environment variable. It contains a Canvas app, and it contains a Cloud Flow as well, just to kind of show you that there are multiple things in here. If I want to deploy this solution to another environment, I can go over to the pipelines operational item on the left. And in here, I can see all of the different pipelines that I have access to. Now, one thing Microsoft do like to do is they really like you to create pipelines. You know this because there's a pipeline button here, there's a pipeline button here, and if I click on deploy here, there's a create new pipeline button here. So they really want you to create new pipelines. It's great that like Microsoft love to put things in different places, but essentially the idea is that you can create pipelines directly from in here. You can in one UI, or you can go and create in the pipeline application I'll show you in a minute. But from here, I can add new stages. So I can add a different stage if I want, so a different target environment to deploy to after my MCJ3 environment. I can choose which pipeline I want to deploy from. So if I have multiple pipelines that correspond to this developer environment, as I change these things, it changes the pipeline. So like this one's added MCJ2 and MCJ3. You can tell I'm great with namings and things. But I can change where I'm going, and I can also see the run history in here. So you can see that I tested it this morning just to make sure it was working ahead of the demo, because you never know, things might go wrong. So in here, it tells me the solution number. It tells me which one was last installed and when it was last deployed. And it does tell me that there may be some pending background association workflows and processes going on, which is all good. If I want to deploy, I'll click on the deploy here button. At this point, I'm offered two options. I'm offered deploy now or deploy later. We'll just do deploy now. This topic isn't really about how to create pipelines and everything. It's more about the administration of it. But I'm going to use some of these artifacts a little bit later, so that's why we're going to do the deployment. So as that's currently validating, what that's doing is that's checking the solution components in my environment. Now, if you notice on the bit too quick there. On the left-hand side, there was only two items there. There was destination and there's summary. Now we have environment variables popped in because it's checked the solution. It's gone, hey, did you know you have an environment variable in your solution? Do you want to update it? And it's telling me there's one update needed. Now, if I had connections in here, it would prompt me to say, hey, do you want to update your connections, or are you fine with not updating your connections? Do you want to use ones that are there? I can also click this button, which I found recently. Oh, no, I can't click that one. I think usually there's a thing under here that tells you what the target environment variable is. Never mind. I'm just going to change this to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, if I want to, and click next. The next thing it's going to do is going to generate some AI deployment notes for me. I can clear these. I can write my own deployment notes. These get stored in the pipeline host, so you can see what that deployment's for. So especially if you're in your organizations that do multiple deployments and you tie them back to like Jira tickets or tie them to like ADO tickets and things like that, or whatever you use for your backlog management, you could put those numbers in here, like, completed ticket 4, completed ticket 56, put the references in here. These are the things that were added during this deployment. And then we can click deploy. And at this point, it's doing a couple of things. So you can currently see it's currently exporting the artifacts. It's automatically renumbered my solution to a 1005, which is great. And then it's going to start doing some things. So there's going to be a background process in here. It's going to start doing some deployments. I'm going to quickly show you a couple of things. So this is the Power Platform Pipelines deployment configuration app. So this is where you can see your deployments, you can see your run histories. There's a nice pretty chart here, although this is very visual. I'm not sure I ever really understand it very well. I'm not a data guy. You can set up your environments in here, so you can see a full list of environments. I have a lot of environments in my things. We can also see all of our pipelines that we've deployed, and we can also see our run history. In our run history, we can actually see the one that's deploying right now. So it's about an hour out because of UTC and British summertime and everything else. So started at 9:20, and we can see the solution name and everything else in the artifact version. So if I click into it, you can see some of the information. So we're in the pre-deploy stage. It's created an artifact record. So this is where the solutions will go. If I click into that solution record, they'll probably not be here yet. Oh no, they're here. That's great. It's working very quickly. But we can see we've got the managed and the unmanaged solutions stored in here. So at any point, if I need to go back and grab a solution, I can absolutely come in here and I can grab those solutions and take a look at them. There are also some settings. I'm not going to cover those, but what I will do is I'll show you the Power Platform Deployment Hub in the Power Platform Admin Center. I'm in dark mode here. Hope that's okay on screen. So this is the Power Platform Admin Center. On the left-hand side, there's a deployment item you can go to, and there's a couple of things in here. You can see your overview of your pipelines. So at the moment, nothing's pending approval for things, but I can select which pipeline host I want to do from. So I've got 3 pipeline hosts. I've got 2 custom hosts and 1 platform host. I can extend the day. I can also create a new host directly from inside here, which is great. If I go over to pipelines, again, I can see the pipelines that are created and installed in each pipeline environment. So as an admin, I can see what's going on inside these pipelines. So I've got another one there, and I can see the run history from in here. So rather than me having to know where the pipeline application is installed to find this information, I can go to Power Platform Admin Center because I'm an admin, and that's where I live day to day, and I can go see all this information. So this information is like filtered up from the deployment applications and stuff like that, but it's just great to have it in multiple places for the different personas that you have. So whether you are an admin and you're handling this, whether you're a pipelines administrator and you want to handle it inside the platform and inside the application, it's all good. No matter where you want to do it, you can deploy these things and you can see these things where you want to see them. With that, I'm just going to pop back to my slides. Great. And we'll pick up the demo bits later. So there's different ALM offerings inside the Power Platform. So I talked about the manual ALM offering. This is the most basic ALM offering that is available, all the way through to your Azure DevOps or your GitHub Actions, which are the more complicated. So most organizations will probably be in the manual side. The ones that are lucky and have the resources and expertise and can do it, the Azure DevOps and GitHub side are the best offerings that we've kind of got inside a Power Platform. There is also the ALM Accelerator, which you'd think would be somewhere in the middle because it's a little bit of an easy tool. It's created by the PowerCat so that you can enable better ALM. But I kind of put that more inside of the right-hand side, so more towards the Azure GitHub offerings, because it's based on ADO and the back end is just a prettier front end canvas apps. There's still some setup required there. It's just a nicer front end for users and stuff like that. But kind of the technical part of it is still more towards ADO side than it is towards the manual side. To organizations and sizes and complexities. These are just some rough numbers in terms of like organization size. So small organizations, up to 100 people, revenue of up to 10 million, medium organizations and larger organizations and stuff like that, just trying to scale up. Now, when we kind of think about organizations and sizes and things like this, we tend to think about this in terms of a linear structure. So the smaller organizations of up to 100 people, they'll probably only be using simple ALM techniques, whereas the enterprise organizations are probably using the more complex ALM techniques. And this is not just for Power Platform, this is for everything. But the one difference I kind of see with this is what happens if you hide the revenue. If you hide the revenue and you're just looking at these on the face of it, what you can actually find is that these things reverse sometimes. So organizations like Blue Sky, new social media platform over the last few years, they have a small team. I think it's probably more than 100 people now, but they have a smallish team. There was like 16 developers originally, but they needed complex ALM. Whereas you have enterprise organizations that may have no dedicated, full code, full stack developers, and they actually might need more simple ALM stuff because most of their applications are built by makers or citizen developers. Their ALM needs are probably much simpler because the applications, although it's an enterprise organization, the applications are probably used by 2 to 10 people. So their ALM needs might be different. So depending on the size of your organization is not the size of your organization, and the revenue of your organization doesn't necessarily denote where on the ALM structure you go. So part of this presentation is all about how ALM looks different for different organizations. Power Platform pipelines can work for different sized organizations, no matter the revenue, no matter the size of you. Another slide that I may have stolen from Microsoft. Stale has different forms. So you get that kind of project stale, dev lead. How do you grow? How do you scale the single project versus the portfolio scale? So the idea of having multiple applications, multiple solutions, and ensuring better practices across all of them. And kind of leads you to two questions, like what do you deem as business critical, and what solutions add value? So how do you equate these two things, and then how do you make sure that your ALM matches these? Pipelines in different organizations. This is my fun slide. This is where I talk about how you actually design your pipelines and how you design your structure for your pipelines. A lot of organizations will probably use this model. So this is what we call a single host pipeline model, a single host pipeline framework. The idea being that instead of that you have a single environment that you provisioned and you've installed the pipeline deployment application, it's all great. And what we're going to do is we're going to manage every single pipeline that someone wants to run from that single host, which is absolutely doable. So you add all of your environments in, you add all your dev and test and UAT ones, you create individual pipelines for the people that need to run things, and then you share the access to those pipelines to those relevant individuals. So in this instance, we're breaking things down into kind of like a UK and Austria, because I did present this in Austria, in Vienna a little while ago, which was I was happy to be asked back, and like rest of the world. So everything's managed inside a single pipeline, but people in the UK get given access to their environment pipelines, and they can deploy through their pipelines, but they don't get given access to the ones in Vienna or the rest of the world. And same across the board. And you can have a single view of all pipelines in a single place. So you do get a centralized governance approach. So your administrators for the Power Platform, your administrators for the tenant, only have to administer inside a single environment, which is great for them. It also makes auto-create really simple. So pipelines are a manual thing. You go in, you add environments, you add your stages, you share access to it. There you go, your pipeline created. But if you have an organization that gets like requests after request after request for new environments, so say a big organization where people want to build things, if you have something like an extended COE starter kit, where you have a provisioning mechanism to say, hey, go create these environments for these people based on this request, as long as they've met all the criteria for our assurances, go and create those environments and share them with them. Like, let's lower the admin overhead and automate the process for people to be able to provision environments. Great. But if you do that, you may also want to auto provision pipelines as well. So you can say, hey, we know these three environments are going to be the ones that people have requested. Let's automatically create a pipeline based on that environment. And you can do all this through Power Automate. I've done it. There's links on my blog about how to do it. It's great for enterprise organizations that don't want the administration hassle of having to create pipelines after the fact, which is great. There are some disadvantages though. It can be a bit more cluttered, especially when you come to extending them. So if you think about the fact that the UK want their own approval mechanisms, but they only want them to run on their on their solutions, whereas the Austrian team, they don't want approval mechanisms, but they want different forms of source control. And the rest of the world, they don't want approval mechanisms and they don't want source control, but they do want delegated deployments. As you come to create all these different things, you just need to be really careful about how you build each automation and how you extend each pipeline. So it can become a little cluttered and a little hard to like see what people are doing. Again, naming conventions and Power Automate, great thing to use. A shameless self-plug, I've got them all on my GitHub as well about how to name your flows better. That's a different talk altogether, but maybe this one goes well, they'll invite me back for another one. So it can be a bit more cluttered, and it does reduce the visibility for different parts of the organization. So if it's all centrally managed by group IT, then the different parts of the organization that may be in charge of the UK, maybe in charge of the rest of the world, they can't see what people are deploying. They don't get that same visibility because they won't have access to the application. So it is one thing to consider. Then there is actually a multi-host pipeline. So I'd say single host is probably fantastic for 90 to 95% of organizations, but there will be those organizations out there that actually want to take a more tailored approach to pipelines. So you may want to delegate the responsibility of pipelines down to the different areas of the business. So either it's UK and Austria or the rest of the world, or it's maybe sales and customer service and field service and stuff like that. There are different ways to handle it. And by giving them the power to create things in their own custom hosts and be able to manage and govern them themselves, it makes it more visible for those different individuals. It makes it easier for them to extend. But it does require some buying from those different organizations or those different parts of the business. So if they're not fully on board with the idea of administering stuff themselves, they are going to maybe kick up a fuss about it. And it also does mean that there are multiple environments to govern and manage and change things. Auto-create can still be used as well. Makes it a little bit more complex. But again, I've done it. I have a massive organization with multi-host pipelines with auto-create as well. And that works seamlessly for them. So it's fantastic. So it's going to be different depending on your different organization and different size of your organization. Delegated deployments. Again, one of the best features of the pipelines. So there are some advantages and there are some disadvantages. We'll go through the advantages first. So delegated deployments is the concept of you deploy something as another user. Now you can't be another user because that's illegal. But what you can do is you can set up a mechanism to deploy as a user based on several credential things. So there are two options for it. There is stage owner, so like a named user. So this could be a service account, or this could just be, Jeff, who's been here for 10 years and is basically waiting out another 10 years till retirement and is never going to leave, or they're his solutions. And there's also service principal deployments as well. So deploying things in as a service principal, something that is a non-interactive user, something where people can't log into it. It's all done by app registrations and client secrets, etc. So it's a more secure way to do things. And both of these things have advantages and disadvantages. So the advantages, deploying on behalf of another user is great, because then it means that if a single person tries to deploy something, if they leave the organization, everything doesn't start to fail after they go. So that's a great thing. It also reduces the single point of failure as well. So if you have that organization and say, Jeff is the one that deploys things and everything's owned as him, then if he goes on holiday for 2 weeks, it stops your whole deployment pipeline. That's crazy. Especially if you have things like hot fixes or bugs that come up and you need to deploy fast. You can't be hamstrung by a single point of failure. It increases the supportability of solutions as they have single owners as well. So again, if you're deploying in as a single owner, if that person ever leaves, then we know what's going to fail, because everything's owned as the same person. If you are deploying and you have 10 developers deploying, when one leaves, you have to do a full audit of your solutions to find out what's going to fail if you've not updated the connections and things like that. It can also streamline licensing requirements, meaning that if you have a service account or a named user account, you don't need to license all the different people. So you don't need to license 10 developers if the 10 developers will never actually use the application, but they'll need to be licensed if they're doing the deployments, which means that you can have that single developer with that single premium license, because that's what the connection is going to run as. That's fine. If you have multiple developers that are never going to actually run an application, they don't need licensing. It's nice and easy. It does reduce the risk, because you can limit the permissioning in target environments and require approvals. This is so good. When I found this, I didn't think it was real. but I tested it. So the concept here is that if you have like a developer, we'll call him Bob. I think Bob's used in my next slide. If we have Bob and we have Frank, Bob does not have permissions to deploy things in test and production, because what we've done is we've given Bob the system customizer rights inside of dev, but he has basic user in UAT and production. Then you have Frank, who is what the solution is going to be deployed in as. He has full permissions in those other environments. When Bob goes to deploy, he'll go to deploy, he'll trigger the deployment will go in as Frank, and because Frank has permissions to install the solution, he can install it in the UAT in the production environment. Bob doesn't have those permissions. So even if he was trying to do something manually and he downloaded a solution, just like, I can't wait for Frank to do the deployment because we don't have pipelines, he couldn't go to those environments and install them. So we can actually remove higher permission levels in other environments by using delegated deployments, because it means that only the person that is doing the deployment, so if it's an SPN, that's fine, we don't need to change permissions. If it's a named user, that's fine, he can have permissions to do things because we trust Frank, we don't trust Bob. But Bob can trigger the deployment. So even if Frank's on holiday, Bob can do it. The next slide makes a lot more sense when I talk about this. It does have some disadvantages though. Stage owners do not support OAuth connectivity natively. And the next slide covers this a little bit. So what that means is that if you have a Cloudflow and that Cloudflow is connected to SharePoint or to Outlook with my credentials, and then Bob tries to do a deployment as me, and I'm the delegated deployment. When Bob tries to do it, it will fail because it can't pretend to be me. Bob can't create a connection on my behalf, and therefore it will fail because OAuth requires the person who is doing it to deploy. So this works fine for SPNs, because if you have an SPN that owns the connection, that's fine, and you can share those connections and stuff like that. But if I want things to go in as a specific individual and I don't want things to fail later on, then Stage Owner just doesn't support OAuth. If it's not a service account, mass updates are needed when people leave. So again, like, although it's one of the advantages, we know that all these things will fail when so-and-so leaves. Again, it's kind of like a disadvantage that we'll have to update 30 connections when they leave, when that person leaves. And SPNs do have different licensing requirements than stage owners. So if you have an SPN that owns a flow in a managed environment, if you do not have Dynamics licensing, you need a process license for that flow. That's the thing that a lot of people miss out on, is if you deploy as an SPN, if it's not owned by if you have Power Apps licensing, it doesn't matter. You still need a process license. If you have Dynamics licensing and it's in the context of an application, then you're fine. But yeah, there are different licensing requirements. So something to be aware of. Now, delegated deployments. I mentioned this earlier. I have a pattern of like an architectural pattern for doing deployments as different named individuals. So in this instance, Fred Smith is the service account that is set for the delegated deployment. Bob Jones is the developer who will like deploy something. So Bob goes to do a deployment from dev to UAT. All the different connections in his Cloudflow are set to Bob. But as he goes and deploys it, what we do in a Power Automate Cloudflow is during that deployment, we pause the deployment, we get the deployment JSON settings configuration, and we reconfigure it for connections that are owned by Fred Smith in that UAT environment. And we change it each time so that Fred's connections are the ones that are rewritten before it goes in. It took me a while to figure this out, but it does work. And currently it's the only architectural pattern for stage owners for OAuth connectors that are available. I really hope Microsoft will change this in the future and make this easier, because this isn't that easy to get working. But I do have some documentation on my site and example flows, and I do have something special coming out soon that will hopefully make this a lot easier as well. But stay tuned for that. the last thing to talk about really is, or one of the last things to talk about is Git and native Git integration in GitHub. So out of the box, Power Platform pipelines store things inside of solutions inside the Power Platform. Now, recently, Microsoft released, I think last year, Microsoft announced a native Git integration for Power Platform. So you can go in and you connect your solutions or your environment to a GitHub repo, and you can, a Git repo, and you can track the changes in there. So you can see all the different changes and store them in like unpacked source control, which is fantastic because we store them in Power Platform pipelines as a solution file. At the moment, native Git is only available for Azure DevOps. Now, Microsoft have heard everyone say, yeah, we like this, but we also want different source providers. GitHub is hopefully coming soon. Microsoft have stated that they know that GitHub is a big ask. So I would think that this is going to be announced hopefully sometime in the future. But yeah, it's not available today. Now, one of the things that you can do with GitHub, with the native Git integration, is actually a branched pipeline, a branched deployments. So if you're not using ADO natively and using all the Azure DevOps tooling, and you want to use pipelines instead, what you can actually do is you can actually use your Git, your native Git for your source control. So you could develop the same solution in multiple environments and push to a centralized Git repo, and then you can pull those changes down to your pipeline deployment or your merge environment, and then you can deploy from your merge environment to your next environment. So you can have multiple developers working on different components, all going into source control, coming down to your pipeline, and then being deployed out, which is fantastic. And I'll briefly show that as well. So we'll go back to the demo for a second. So this is my MCJ preview environment, which is different from my Mike Collins-Jones environment. And in here, I have the same components. So the way I got this to sync between Azure DevOps in Azure DevOps is if I create a solution with the exact same publisher and with the exact same name, then it'll sync to my GitHub. So if I make a change in here, if I go to my environment variable, and I create a change in here, and I'll put this as EPPC demo, and hit save. This is already connected to my Git repo in ADO. So we're updating the environment variable, and then again, natively in UI, in platform, there is a source control button here. So I can go here, it's just on the pipelines one. In here, it will actually tell me that I've made one change, which is my Git, my environment variable. If I hit commit to that and add a comment, EPPC demo commit, that'll go up. And then what I'll do first is I'll show you the native Git integration, and then hopefully by that time the changes will sync across, and I can see it in my other environments. So that's all good. So we can see commit successfully. This is my ADO Git repo. In here I have a folder called Power Platform Pipelines folder, and in here I can see a bunch of things. So I can see my solutions, so I can go and see my ADO Git solution, and I can see the different things in here, the missing dependencies, solution YAML, etc. I can look at my Canvas apps. So again, one of these was a Canvas app, maybe this one, and I can see the YAML inside of here. So I can see all the YAML code for my Canvas app. I can't remember where the environment variable definition, that's it. If I click in here, I can see my environment variable definition, and I can see it's just been updated with the EPPC demo here, and it tells me a little bit about it in YAML form, which is great because people like, well, Microsoft please say people like YAML. I'm not too sure. I don't really deal with YAML or XML these days. So they've changed everything to be YAML based inside of the native Git integration, which is great. So I can see all the components in here. I've got my full solution like unpacked here. I can see all the details here. If I go back to my my other environment, my Mike Collins-Jones environment, and I go to my source control now, I now see that I have a check projects. This one. There we go. I can now see that I have a change and I have an update because I didn't deploy my change earlier after I changed the environment variable from moving things around. But I now have an update here. And if I have an update here, what I can do is I can pull this down. I think it's probably going to complain about, merge is probably fine. It's going to pull that change down from that Git repo. Pull successful, great. So pull that change down, and then I can go ahead and deploy that change. So if I go look at my solution objects for a second, and my Git var, which is set to QWE123 or something before, it should now be set to EPPC demo. Cool, look at that. Git integration works. The last thing I didn't show is that when I triggered that deployment before, one of the things I did do is actually had it export to my GitHub. So if I go to here, and I'll drag this up. Now, it looks like it did fail when I deployed it a little while ago, but I do have one that I did an hour ago. And this is just a Cloudflow. It pulled the solution into GitHub. It created a new branch in my GitHub repo. And then again, I've got things like my environment variable definition here in XML. And you can see this is the Manchester UG. So yeah, that's my old definition here. But this is in XML format rather than YAML. So different ways to do things. So the extending with GitHub does use XML still to unpack. The native Git integration does use YAML. So things to be aware of. But in terms of deployments, in terms of the way you want to use it, it is something that you can use today. If you want to use it today, you can use the Git integration using Power Platform, like Cloudflows and HTTP actions to call GitHub and GitHub actions and stuff like that. Or you can use the built-in native Git integration if you want to use ADO as well. So multiple ways to do the same thing. Now I'm going to head back to the slides and just wrap up quickly so we have time for some questions. So other things to investigate. Things I didn't cover today because there's so much to cover. Default host routing using environment groups. If you're using managed environments and environment groups, you can actually route people's default host to different environments, meaning that if they create things themselves, create pipelines themselves, they can be routed to the right environment. The deployment hub, which I showed a bit of, you can block personal Power Platform pipelines and unmanaged customizations. You can use a hybrid approach to pipeline hosts, so you can use personal pipelines and custom hosts. Environment hydration, if you've deleted your dev environment by accident, you can absolutely rehydrate them using Power Platform pipeline hosts. There's a button for that, and there's a setting for that. You can also trigger deployments via the Pack CLI as well. So if you want to just trigger things in your preferred command line, you can do that and have a look at the default custom host as well. That link there, that QR code, takes you to my Power Platform Pipelines framework. So basically everything that I've talked about today in more detail and additional structures for how you can provision pipelines inside of organizations of different sizes. So to just wrap up, pipelines are a viable option for organizations big and small. Think about your enterprise-wide strategy. So from biz makers to sit devs, consultants, devs, partners, everything else, fusion teams, think about ALM first. It's really important. If you're using pipelines, create your own pipeline strategy. So like I've done in organizations, whether it's single host, multi-host, hybrid, automatic creations, whatever you like, you do those. Using pipelines does not remove the ability for source control. Multiple dev environment buildings, you can use common deployment tools as well. It can enable better visibility, and the native Git integration is fire. So with that, that's my QR code again if you want to connect with me on any of the social medias and things like that. But thank you very much for having me today.
Perfect. Thank you, Matt, for a great presentation and demo. So now we're getting the questions and answers part. Should you wish to ask questions, feel free to put in the chat now. Can you see the chat yourself, Matt?
Yes, yeah.
So there's 3 questions there. You can see them. Bottom 3.
I can see at least 2. I'll do the one I can see first. When you manually import solutions, you get the update, leave all components, and upgrade, delete all components. Is ALM pipelines the same as an upgrade? Yes, they changed the pattern for updating solutions to be the the upgrade and the diff, the smart diff in the solutions, meaning that Microsoft want you to move more towards just over. Hello?
Yeah, you're back there. Sorry, I just went there for a second, Matt. I don't know if it was Wi-Fi or
Yeah,
not. Yeah, it's back now again. Sorry.
I've just got it again.
Yeah.
I can't see any of the chat now. It's
Okay,
all this bit.
I'll read it out to you if you want.
Yeah.
So when you manually import solutions, you get update, leave old components, and upgrade, delete old components options. Is the ALM pipeline the same as an upgrade?
Yeah, so I was trying to answer that. I think it's the upgrade pattern. I can never remember which way around it is, but it's the one that Microsoft wants us to use, which is probably delete all components. But they use the smart diff solution now, so that when you deploy things, it runs much faster. And the concept is that they want things in a single solution, so you no longer need to do like vertical solutions and horizontal solutions. You can just deploy in as one big solution.
Perfect. So just the next question there is, just to clarify, the Git demo, was that two different users, each with their own dev environments, or both using the same dev environment, or something else?
The Git demo was for me it was a single user, but it can be multiple users. But there were two different environments. So there's the Matt Collins-Jones environment, and then there's the MCJ preview environment. Can be two different users. It's just solution files connected in two different environments that point to the same Git repo, and that's how that works.
Perfect. And then just another question there is, how can Power Platform pipelines be used in conjunction with data loss prevention policies and environment strategies to enforce organizational standards?
They can. So pipelines will just do the deployments. It doesn't really tie in with data loss prevention policies at all. Now you can choose to administer data loss prevention policies on those environments. So if you don't want to extend to GitHub, for instance, and use HTTP calls to go and do that, you can block that. But they're kind of two separate things, really. The data loss prevention things run separately from pipelines. I do see that last one now.
Perfect.
I've just got my chat back. Regarding environment hydration, how does this work? If a new dev joins a team, can they set up a new dev environment and pull down the latest code? Yes. So there's a toggle which was in the deployment configuration app. I think it's now been moved to the Power Platform Admin Center as a setting, and that allows you to basically choose which solutions you import. So as long as you've deployed all your solutions through Power Platform pipelines, if you go to a new environment or any environment and choose import solution on the ribbon, the import option will give you a list. We'll say, do you want to import from a file, or do you want to import from a pipeline? Now, if you choose import from a pipeline, it gives you a list of all the solution files that you have in your pipeline, as well as the managed and unmanaged versions of it. So you can actually deploy a managed solution from the import wizard from a pipeline, or you can import the unmanaged solution. So if you're hydrating a dev environment, you can go in and you can choose all of your unmanaged solutions and then import them in. That's an additional option. It is still a bit of manual work, especially with a lot of solutions, but it's much better than having to download one, like all of them individually, and then install them one at a time. You can at least just click them one at a time in the UI and see them go in and install. So yeah, hope that answers the questions.
Perfect. Yeah, I think that's all the questions. So I just sent a poll there, just people to rate the session, if that's okay. And on behalf of the ESPC community, we'd like to extend a big thank you to you again, Matt, for taking time out today to carry out this webinar. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So that's the end of today's webinar. You can find this webinar and more at sharepointeurope.com/resource center. Thanks again for all of you for joining us today. I hope you join us again soon. Take care.